Monomer, a basic building block. Nucleic acid, a type of organic compound. Nucleotide, the monomer which forms DNA and RNA. Double helix, the shape of DNA consists of two strands joined together and twisted spirally. Hereditary, genetic information passed on from parent to offspring. Extra-nuclear DNA, DNA found outside of the nucleus, mitochondrial and chloroplastic DNA. Nuclear DNA, DNA found in the nucleus. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, is made up of nucleotides. Nitrogenous bases are adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. DNA carries the genetic code for protein synthesis. RNA consists of nucleotides. Nitrogenous bases found in RNA are adenine, uracil, guanine, and cytosine. Messenger RNA, mRNA, carries the code for protein synthesis from DNA to the ribosome. Ribosomal RNA, rRNA, forms ribosomes which are the site of protein synthesis. Transfer RNA, tRNA, brings amino acids to the ribosome to form the protein. Amino acids, monomers of proteins. Base triplet, 3 nitrogenous bases, one after the other on DNA. Transcription, the first stage of protein synthesis. mRNA formed from DNA carrying the code for the protein to be made. Translation, second stage of protein synthesis. Amino acids combine to form a protein. Codon, 3 nitrogenous bases, one after the other on mRNA. These are complementary to the triplet on DNA. Anticodon, 3 nitrogenous bases, one after the other on tRNA. These are complementary to the codon on mRNA.
Chromosome, a thread-like structure made up of DNA and protein. Found in the nucleus of most living cells, carrying genetic information in the form of genes.
Chromatid, one of the 2 identical strands of a replicated chromosome. Centromere, region where the 2 chromatids of a chromosome are held together. Homologous chromosomes, a pair of chromosomes of the same shape and size that have similar genes for each characteristic, occupying the same position. Bivalent, a pair of homologous chromosomes which lie next to each other and are physically in contact with each other at a point where crossing over will occur. Unreplicated chromosomes. An unreplicated chromosome has a single double-stranded DNA molecule. Replicated chromosomes. A replicated chromosome has 2 identical double-stranded DNA molecules.
Diploid, 2N, 2 complete sets of chromosomes in a cell. Haploid, N, 1 complete set of chromosomes in a cell. Gene, a segment of DNA in a chromosome that contains the code for a particular characteristic. Centrosome, organelle, containing 2 centrioles, found only in animal cells. Centriole. Structures formed when the centrosome divides into 2. They move to opposite ends of the cell during cell division. Crossing over. Overlapping of homologous chromosomes, resulting in the exchange of genetic material during prophase 1. Chiasma. Point where 2 chromatids overlap during crossing over. Karyotype. A representation of the number, shape, and arrangement of a full set of chromosomes in the nucleus of a somatic cell. Autosome. The first 22 pairs of chromosomes which control the appearance, structure, and functioning of the body. Gonosomes. Sex chromosomes, the pair of chromosomes, XX or XY, responsible for sex determination. Somatic cells or body cells. Any cells in an organism excluding male and female gametes. They are diploid, i.e., have 2 sets of chromosomes, and are produced through mitosis. Sex cells or gametes. Specialized cells called gametes, sperm cell and egg cell. They have a haploid number of chromosomes and are produced through meiosis. Non-disjunction. When homologous chromosome pairs fail to separate in meiosis. Karyokinesis. Karyo means nucleus and kinesis means synthesis or division. Karyokinesis is the process of division of the nucleus of a cell. Cytokinesis. Cyto means cytoplasm and kinesis means synthesis or division. Cytokinesis is the process of division during which the cytoplasm of a single cell divides into 2 daughter cells. Reproductive strategy. Structural, functional and behavioral adaptations that improve the chances of fertilization and the survival of offspring. External fertilization. Fertilization that takes place outside the female's body, usually in water. Internal fertilization. Fertilization that occurs inside the female's body where the male has deposited his sperm. Ovipary. Eggs are laid. The embryo develops outside the mother's body. Ovovivipary. Young develop from eggs fertilized internally and retained within the mother's body after fertilization, until they hatch. Vivipary. The young develop inside the uterus of the mother, after eggs are fertilized internally. Young are nourished through the placenta. Amniotic egg. The embryo inside the egg is protected by a hard shell. The egg consists of many extra, embryonic membranes, that serve different functions. Extraembryonic membranes. Membranes that surround the developing embryo inside the amniotic egg or uterus. Amnion. Produces amniotic fluid which cushions embryo and protects it from mechanical injury, temperature changes, dehydration. Allantois. Collects the embryo's nitrogenous waste and assists in the exchange of gases. Chorion. Allows for gaseous exchange in the amniotic egg and forms the placenta in mammals. Yolk sac. Contains the food reserves for the developing embryo. Precocial development. When hatchlings are well developed as they hatch, able to move and feed themselves, with eyes open. Limited parental care. Altricial development. When hatchlings are underdeveloped as they hatch, unable to move or feed or fend for themselves. Young require more parental care. Parental care includes the building of nests, protection, teaching of young and feeding. The care, or lack thereof, directly influences the survival of the young. Gamete. An egg or sperm cell with half the number of chromosomes. Gametogenesis. The process in which gametes are produced in the testes and ovaries through meiosis. Oogenesis. The process that occurs when egg cells are made in the ovary through meiosis. Spermatogenesis. The process that takes place when sperm cells are made in the testes through meiosis. Germinal epithelium. Cuboidal epithelium, found on the surface of the testes and ovaries, which gives rise to the cells which mature to form sperm cells and egg cells respectively. Graphian follicle. Mature follicle inside the ovary filled with fluid in which the ovum grows. Ovulation. The release of an ovum from the Graphian follicle of the ovaries. Endometrium. The inner lining of the uterus wall. Menstruation. The monthly loss of blood and tissue, as a result of changes that occur in the lining of the uterus. Menopause. Stage in the life of a woman when she stops ovulating and menstruating. Usually occurs between the ages of 45 and 55. Fertilization. The fusion of the haploid sperm cell nucleus and the haploid egg cell nucleus, to form a diploid nucleus of the zygote. Implantation. The attachment of the embryo to the endometrium lining the uterus. Filial generation, F1. Offspring of parent organisms. Locus. The exact position, location, of a gene on a chromosome. Genetic engineering. Techniques used to change the genetic material of a cell or living organism. A form of biotechnology. Receptor. Structure that receives a stimulus and converts it into an impulse. Effector. Gland or organ that brings about a response to stimuli received by the body. Stimulus. Detectable change in the internal or external environment. Impulse. Electrical signal created by receptor organs in response to stimuli. Transmit. To send something from one place to another. Autonomic nervous system. Controls our involuntary bodily functions. It is divided into the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Peripheral nervous system. Consists of nerves that extend outside the central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Cranium. Part of the skull that contains and protects the brain. Meninges. Protective membranes surrounding the brain and spinal cord. Cerebrospinal fluid. Fluid around the brain and spinal cord to aid in protection. Gray matter. Part of the brain and spinal cord consisting of cell bodies and dendrites. White matter. Part of the brain and spinal cord consisting of myelinated axons. Neuron. Specialized nerve cells which transmits nerve impulses. Dendrites. Fibers that transmit impulses to a cell body in a neuron. Nerve. A bundle of neurons. Synapse. The gap between the axon of one neuron and the dendrite of another. Neurotransmitter. Chemicals which carry impulses across the synapse. Homeostasis. The tendency of living organisms to maintain their internal environment constant, within narrow limits, irrespective of changes in the external environments. Alzheimer's disease. Disease caused by nerve defects usually in older people and characterized by memory loss and confusion. Multiple sclerosis. Disease caused by damage to the myelin sheath of neurons and characterized by physical and mental disabilities. Rods. Receptor cells found in the retina of the eye, which are sensitive to dim light and help to distinguish between black and white. Cone. Receptor cell found in the retina of the eye, which are sensitive to bright light and help to distinguish between different colors. Pupil. Central opening within the iris which allows light to enter. Pupillary mechanism. Regulation of the pupil size to control the amount of light entering the eye. Accommodation. The ability of the lens of the eye to alter its shape for clear vision, when viewing both near and distant objects. Field of vision. The area that one eye can see. Convex. A shape which curves outwards. Thicker in the middle than the edges. Concave. A shape which curves inwards. Thinner in the middle than the edges. Organ of Corti. Receptor for hearing. Crista, plural, cristae. Receptor which detects changes in speed and direction of the head. Maculae. Receptor which detects changes in the position of the head. Semicircular canals. Canals which are fluid-filled and contain receptors. Ampulla. Plural ampullae. Swelling at the base of the semicircular canals which contains the crista. Vestibule. Structure made up by the sacculus and utriculus. These contain the maculae. Grummet. Small structure inserted into the tympanic membrane. Has a hole through the middle to allow airflow. Endocrine system. A system responsible for chemical coordination and regulation of various activities in the body. Homeostasis. A process of maintaining a constant internal environment, blood and tissue fluid, within the body. Hormones. Chemical messengers in the body. They travel in the bloodstream and cause an effect elsewhere in the body. Negative feedback. Operate in the human body to detect changes or imbalances in the internal environment and to restore balance. Osmoregulation. Regulation of the water balance in the internal environment. Osmotic pressure. A measure of the concentration of solutes, e.g. salt, glucose, present in a solution. This may determine whether a cell loses or gains water. Antagonistically. To work in opposite ways. If one hormone causes an increase of a substance, the other hormone will cause a decrease of that substance, e.g. insulin and glucagon. Thermoregulation. The control of the body temperature to keep it as close to 37 degrees Celsius as possible. Endothermic. Relates to an organism that generates heat internally through a metabolic process to maintain a constant body temperature. Vasoconstriction. Narrowing of blood vessels. Evaporation. Heat loss when sweat changes into water vapor on the surface of the skin. Conduction. Transfer of heat between objects which are in contact. Convection. As warm air rises, it is replaced by cooler air. Radiation. Heat transfer between two objects which are not in contact. Hormone. A chemical messenger produced in one part of the plant and has an effect on another part of the stem. Tropism. Growth or turning movement of a plant or part of a plant in response to external stimulus. Phototropism. Growth of part of a plant in response to the stimulus of light. Geotropism. Growth of a plant in response to gravity. Unilateral light. Light coming from one side or direction. Herbicide. A substance that is toxic to plants and destroy unwanted vegetation, weeds. Apical bud. The growing point of the stem located at the tip of the stem. Apical dominance. When auxins produced at the tip of the stem inhibit the growth of the branches closer to the tip of the stem. Biological species. A group of organisms with similar characteristics that interbreed with one another to produce fertile offspring. Biological evolution. Any genetic change in a population that is inherited over several generations. Population. A group of individuals of the same species occupying a particular habitat. Punctuated equilibrium. Evolution characterized by long periods of little or no change, followed by short periods of rapid change. Natural selection. Mechanism of evolution. Organisms survive if they have characteristics that make them suited to the environment. Artificial selection. Human-driven selective force, e.g. breeding of plants and animals to produce desirable traits. Inbreeding. Mating of individuals that are closely related. Outbreeding. Mating of individuals that are not closely related. Speciation. The formation of a new species. Geographic speciation. Formation of a new species when the parent population separated by a geographical barrier. Reproductive isolation. A mechanism that prevents two species from mating with one another and making fertile hybrids. Hominids. Hominids are a biological group that includes modern humans, our early human ancestors, chimpanzees and bonobos, gorillas and orangutans, sometimes collectively referred to as apes. Hominins. Hominins are a subgroup of the hominids, and includes only modern humans and early human ancestors. Homo. This is a Latin term meaning human. Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens means wise human. All humans living today belong to the same species of Homo sapiens. Primates. A biological grouping that includes lemurs, baboons, chimpanzees, apes, and humans. Primates share a number of characteristics as will be detailed shortly. Phylogenetic diagram. A branching diagram or tree showing the evolutionary relationships among various biological species. Arboreal. Living primarily in trees. Opposable thumb. A thumb that can be placed opposite the fingers of the same hand. Sexual dimorphism. Distinct differences in size or appearance between the sexes of an animal in addition to the sexual organs themselves. Bipedalism. Ability to walk on two legs. Quadrupedalism. Use of four limbs for locomotion, quadrupeds. Diurnal. Active during the day rather than at night. Foramen magnum. Hole in the base of skull through which the spinal cord passes. Cranial ridge. Ridge running across the top of the skull that serve to attach large jaw muscles to the head. Prognathous. Protruding, projecting forward, upper or lower jaw. Hominin. The group consisting of modern and early humans. Pithecus. Greek word of ape. Genus. Biological classification ranking between family and species, consisting of structurally or phylogenetically related species. Species. A group of organisms that are genetically similar, can interbreed and produce fertile offspring. Ardipithecus ramidus. Ardipithecus, ardi means ground or floor, and ramidus means root. The name refers to the closeness of this species to the roots or origins of humanity. Australopithecus australis is the Latin for southern, thus southern ape. Australopithecus afarensis. Afarensis. From afar, a location in Ethiopia. Australopithecus africanus. Africanus. From Africa, thus southern ape of Africa. Australopithecus setiba. Setiba. Sotho word, meaning natural spring or well. Australopithecus robustus. Robustus, meaning robust, strong, sturdy, heavy set. Homo. Latin word for human. Homo habilis. Habilis, meaning skillful or handy. Homo erectus. Erectus, meaning erect, walking upright. Homo sapiens. Sapiens. Wise, thus Homo sapiens the wise human, a reference to the large brain. Homo ergaster. Ergaster. The Greek word for work, thus working man. Homo heidelbergensis. Homo neanderthalensis. The names of these species are derived from two towns in Europe where these species were first discovered. Homo naledi. Naledi, meaning star.